Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inner game of Smash. This is Theo, or better known as Squibble, here with my co-host Howard, Mr. Tuesday,
Hello.
and Tien.
Also known as Tien.
Yep. And we have a very special guest this week. It's everyone's favorite Zoso. Hi, Zoso.
Everyone's favorite Zoso.
100% favorite.
What's going on?
Not too much. I'm just excited to have you here. So,
Really?
why did you want to come on the show, Zoso?
I don't remember. I just kind of jokingly told Tan the other day that he needed to have me on the show to stop the whole outfit from like nosediving, basically.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Really
I
good
can't
guy.
have you did.
Yeah, people. It was like within the last few days, somebody was talking about having me on the show, and it sounded like a fun idea.
I think it was Kunai who shouted you out after your big post about the change in the New England Melee scene and your change on how you view the game.
Oh yeah, that was a really old post actually that got
From last
necroed
year.
for some reason.
Oh yeah, I
that
forgot
was-
about
was-
that. I
yeah,
thought it
that
was January
from-
of this year.
from like about a year ago. Yeah. But yeah, that was really, really old. Another reason why I wanted to be on the show actually is because I haven't been playing Melee that much, but if I talk about Melee with people, then that usually gets me more excited to play. So I don't know, maybe if I thought maybe if I was on the show, it would make me, get out and start playing with people again. So I don't know, we'll see.
Well, we definitely all want you back, Zoso. So,
Oh well,
thanks for coming on.
We miss New England Melee, Grandpa. It's not the same without the constant harassment and improvement.
For what it's worth, I missed the beatings.
Don't worry, those will be back in spades.
Morale will continue to improve.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been really, when we say that you're like the New England grandpa, I think, we mean that with a lot of respect and admiration for how much you've taught
Sure.
the scene and how much you've contributed.
Mhm.
As as our resident top, one of our resident top players. So do you want to talk a little bit about Melee, some of your thoughts about how Melee stacks up to other fighting games, and how you got into competitive gaming to begin with? I know you've been around for a very long time.
Yeah, for sure. I think compared to other fighting games, I'll get to that in a second. But basically, the short answer is I've played video games since I was a kid, and Melee just happened to be a game that I really, really liked, that had a lot of potential for, pitting people against each other, basically.
Yeah.
In a competitive environment. It was basically the first game that I really fell in love with that was that most resembled like a traditional fighter, I guess I would say. Because I played Street Fighter and stuff as a kid, but I think when you're a kid, it's not like when you do things, you're not really thinking oh, is this gonna lead to anything for me down the road, or do I want to be good at this? It's just oh, this is fun, I'll just do it, So that's kind of what it was for me.
Yeah, I feel like fighting games have changed a lot over the years. When we were kids,
Yeah,
games
absolutely.
like Street Fighter or Smash Brothers, they were just something you played around with casually with your friends. But within the last 4 or 5 years, it's definitely the flavor has sort of changed, where you don't get into the game unless you want to be serious, more or less. And
For sure, yeah.
being
and
a casual player versus a tournament player, those definitions have been, tastes have changed a lot.
Yeah, and there's two sides to that, because we've obviously all changed as we've gotten older, and I think probably the most important thing that happens to you as you get older is you become aware of the fact that time is a finite resource, and there's that, and then the games have also changed because Street Fighter 2, when they first made it, Capcom just kind of wanted to make a successful game, but a lot of the stuff that makes Street Fighter 2 deep is literally unintended, or just a result of a glitch or something that players learned how to abuse.
Like
I think what's
combos to begin with, right?
Yeah, combos really. There was a combo counter, but what is it it was the hardware that they were using in the arcades that time. I think the earlier Street Fighter, the earlier games in the Street Fighter 2 series were CPS 1 or something, and then the later ones I think were CPS 2. She would know more about this than me. But basically, like certain combos you can do in Street Fighter 2 are like, or where you can chain a couple of light attacks together and then cancel the last one into a special. Like, it's not really supposed to work that way. The engine isn't really kind of made for that. So it was just kind of something that players found, like sort of by accident, but then that becomes like part of being good at the game. But I think what's happening now, obviously all that stuff is still there, but like Capcom is taking the not the best of the best, because I mean they don't really have time to do something like that, but good players who know a lot about fighting games, who know what makes a good fighting game, and saying like, why don't you work with us and we'll make this like good for competitive players.
Well, it's only very recently that's started to happen, right? Like, when you think of the greatest competitive games of all time, they were all sort of magical accidents, right?
Oh, I agree.
A Brood War, considered the greatest PC RTS of all time. Like, they wanted to be good, but they didn't expect anything like what they got. And then it's only in like the last 5 or 10, like maybe 5 or 10 years that people have been trying to design competitively balanced games to either better or worse, right? Like, Brood War succeeded wildly, where, for example, StarCraft 2 didn't quite succeed as well.
Dota 1.
Big, though.
Yeah. And it's very strange how trying to make a competitive game doesn't necessarily mean that you make a better competitive game than the sort of mishmash of random mechanics together that makes Melee, which is like completely, like, if anyone told me that Melee would still be around being played competitively, being pushed to the limit every year in 15 years, I would have said they were crazy.
It's funny if you look at do you guys watch a lot of speedrunners?
I do, yeah.
Oh yeah, AGDQ
like,
just finished up.
It's kind of funny to me, like every year or so, like we found, what was it, like V canceling earlier this year,
Yeah.
and then last year it was like God, what was it? There were a
shield
couple
drops
of
are the
things.
big thing over the last
Yeah, shield drops,
years.
and like everybody's like every time something new happens, it's like everybody's, wow, Melee, like deepest game ever, oldest game ever. This past summer, the testing community found like 6 new really important glitches in Super Metroid.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like those games are constantly changing, and it was I don't know if you guys watched Games Done Quick this year, but the Link to the Past reverse boss order run. Did you guys watch that?
I didn't get to see that.
It was incredible. It was amazing. It's like one of the best speed runs I've ever seen. It's one of the most interesting categories I've ever seen. Like and when I say reverse boss order, I mean they literally fight Ganon first with like 4 hearts. They have 4 hearts and they just go fight Ganon. I don't think they even have.
Wait, how do you even damage him with like without silver silver
Is
arrows?
it the butterfly net?
No, not the butterfly net. You get like the tempered sword, but basically that game is kind of questionably coded in some places. Like you can basically just walk through walls anywhere as long as you move 1 pixel at a time.
Nice.
But anyway, I don't want to get too far off the topic. But yeah, I think like that stuff is basically just always going to be there. There's always going to be accidental stuff or unintended stuff in the games, really, that makes them, not just a pretty good game, but like an amazing game that people will play for decades. But I think like if you look at like Street Fighter 4, even early on in that game, and I mean we're at what, like year 6 or 7 of Street Fighter 4 or something.
Yeah,
something like that. And like I think it's pretty clear, from the very beginning that they were trying to, make like a polished game. Whereas like even though they're really venerated and like really widely played, like the Street Fighter 2 games, they kind of have some of that feel of like, this game is weird. Like is that really like Damage and Super Turbo is random.
Yeah,
you guys
and Dizzy.
Like, Dizzy is also random over like a very significant range. There's a lot of really weird, like really questionable stuff in that game, from like both from a design standpoint and from like an execution standpoint and from like a balance standpoint, where like Balrog Super hits like full screen and does like 60% and is safe on block.
Yep.
It's like, yeah. And of course he's gonna get super. Like, special moves give you like 30% of your super meter in that game. It's ridiculous.
So we've talked a little bit about how the mechanics have changed over your tenure over playing video games.
Yeah, sure.
But you've talked a lot in the past about how this game has meant this game of Melee and competing as a whole has meant to you personally, and how that's evolved.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that people will be really interested to hear your perspective on that, as since none of us have been playing as long as you have, pretty much. Like very, very few people in New England, at least.
I don't. Me personally, I don't know. I guess everybody says this. I don't really feel like I've changed that much. I think the weird thing for me was, like, there are a couple of other players from New England, like Dark, Korean DJ, like Court. There are players who have done way more than I have in my career. I have no problem admitting that. But I think I've been around and been more of a present influence, like, for longer on the scene than they have. You know what I mean? Because even though DJ was still going to national tournaments, he doesn't really show up to local stuff and like interact with the scene, kind of. You know what I mean? Like not as much.
Yeah, he just shows up and bops people, and that's his contribution.
Yeah, which is fine. He's also a heck of a nice guy. He's just a guy you could hang out with. So like kind of coming into my own and realizing that people respect me and like expect me to win, that was kind of an adjustment. But in terms of like my approach to the game, I get frustrated a lot less now. That's a big one.
I've noticed that for sure.
Yeah,
you said
for
that
sure.
You don't feel
so
like
you used
changed
to
very
rage
much.
more?
Oh yeah, a lot more.
For sure.
Oh.
Yeah. Like one of the things about Zoso before was that sometimes like he would just need to take a game off just to adjust to like returning to parity. But now I feel like Zoso has like a lot more zen like of an approach to the game, and it's like much harder to tilt him.
Yeah, that's a big part of. I don't know what young Zoso was like, but I think that's a big part of growing up, is realizing that you can't just go off.
I mean, I was like younger and really competitive, but like that motivation has kind of stayed. Just like wanting to learn as much as I can about the game and wanting to beat people. Mm-hmm. But I guess probably within the last like 6 months or so, I don't know, competition in general has gotten a little less interesting. I don't know, for me, and I don't like the scene as much as I used to. But that's like, I guess that's a whole other conversation.
So one thing that I've always wondered is I played another game way back when, an MMO, and on the come up, you're always super excited, right? Like when no one knows about you, and you're like, you have to go beat these top people and take their names, and that's always super exciting, and you're always motivated to practice hours and hours a day when that's happening. You're like leveling up, right? You're going through the process. You're going up the floors on Kung Fu. You're beating the bosses through Soul Society, whatever you want to call it. You're always facing someone stronger, and you're always getting recognition. But once you're at the top, it's hard to keep that fire. Like we saw it in Armada, right? He retired as soon as he was universally recognized as the best in the world. He's like, "Yep, I'm done. Peace, guys."
You see it in pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
It's like it's a pretty rare person who's going to be at the top of whatever their vocation is, and then decide that they just have to keep going just to find out how much there is.
Yeah.
And that's like you almost need to go outside of fighting games to like find people that exceptional.
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple of people who have done it in like history for various sports, but they're incredibly rare. Because first you need the talent to get there in the first place, and second, I don't even know what kind of personality it takes to be like, I'm the best. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. Because it's like you need to practice so much.
I think you kind of get past a point, and that's definitely not me. So this is kind of speculation and based on like what I've heard. And again, not even really fighting game players, although I think Daigo Umehara would be a good example of that. But like great musicians, like how they talk about if you want to be great or if you want to be the best, just focus on being a good student, and focus on like having a willingness to learn and like being able to see things with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking of it in terms of like, oh God, I have to practice so much. This is a
chore.
Yeah, this is a chore, exactly. Like, I I read a great article recently. It was an interview with Yo-Yo Ma, where he talks about like the way he views practice and how he like values the time more as he gets older. But it's like, you don't want to think of practice as something like grinding or something tedious that you have to do. It's like that's like a huge part of like your craft, your vocation. Like that's what you're about, you know. So I think it's kind of like embracing it and treating it as like this is such a treat, like this is something that I get to do. I get to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
I think what really trips people up is just that the progress becomes way slower as you advance.
Do you think you have accomplished that, Zoso, in like your training regimen?
No, definitely
okay.
not. Definitely not. No, I hate practicing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's especially since for the top players, most of their time compared to going to tournaments, like they go to a lot of tournaments, but percentage-wise, more of it's probably spent practicing, right? Like a large percentage.
I think it
not
really
always.
Depends.
Not for Hungry Box, for example.
Wow, Hungry Box practices so much.
He plays a lot.
Yeah,
he talks about like the hours he put in with Captain Crunch preparing for DreamHack.
Yeah.
I think everybody's a little different. I think for a lot of people, like practice or just playing is their practice, so maybe they don't really practice. But like I know Mewtwo King has been very open about the fact that he doesn't really practice outside of tournaments, and he hasn't for like years.
Right. But at the same time, he's part of the people who have kind of lost their passion to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I was thinking was you have to really love the game and love what you're doing to really get that far. Like when you look at all the top players, like it's very clear that they absolutely love, not just the competition aspect. Like the competition aspect is huge. They love beating each other, but to a certain extent, they just love Melee, right? Like they're just fans of the game. And I think you need that. And I think that if that ever starts to fizzle, for any reason, you have to find that again, or you're not going to be able to make it. Because that's just, you need that passion.
I think so too. And I think especially to be the best in something very competitive, I don't know. This is something I wonder about a lot, because in some ways, a lot of people who succeed are just kind of, I was talking about how like when you're a kid, you just do things because it's fun and because you want to do it. I kind of feel like that's a good attitude to approach anything competitive with. Like don't think about how good you are or how good you're going to be in like a week, like have goals, but really just kind of try to just enjoy it and get as much out of it as you can every time you play. But then I look at, the level that Armada's at, that like Leffen is at, and it takes a lot of deliberate, concerted, like very targeted training too. You know what I mean? So that's kind of something I wonder about a lot. I guess there's not really like a panacea, something that works for everybody.
There's no formula for success, really.
Yeah.
Where, when you're just getting into a game, or you find that this is something you really want to, excel at, having like childish open-mindedness is very helpful.
Yeah.
But I mean, at some point you also have to...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think at some point you do have to like realize like what the strict rules are, and the kind of the constraints that you're operating with. And this is just like something that I had heard recently about like how most people can be, some line was tossed around about how it might not be too hard to be like a Melee top 100 player. I think it might not be like the hardest thing in the world to beat a Melee top 100 player, especially like in a matchup where you're very well versed or favored in. But at the same time, to like consistently be someone of that caliber means that you have to be like among the top people in the world who want to win the most.
Yeah.
And that you have to be like as diligent of a student and a learner to maintain that. So I don't think it's trivial. I don't think it's easy. It's a really personal quest. Like, and I think for the people who've made it, it's very validating.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, there's always going to be like the subjectivity of the list to begin with that you're kind of going to be grappling with. Like, I certainly don't think I should be higher on the list than Anthony, for example, if you just look at what we've each done in the last year. I think that's. I mean, he did take like a 6-month break, granted, but he's been competing like every week and really, really testing himself for months now. I don't think I really deserve my spot, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, but shoutouts to Slox. We're all sending him our energy back home from New England. We hope he kicks ass at Genesis.
Spirit Bomb?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so too, but I also just want him to have fun.
I just want him to have fun. I agree.
I want him doing
I want him
himself.
to win.
Remember why he's there.
I care way more about the pride than his personal happiness. I don't know what you guys are on about.
The pride. Whose pride?
The regional pride. It's like being
Pride.
patriotic for a country. It's pointless, but you can
Oh,
brag
Pats.
about it, and it's kind of
Yeah.
socially acceptable.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I think for like on the case of Slogs, right? I'm actually really glad that he resonates so much with Peko in ping pong because he does really exhibit so much of that childish like yearning to learn, and he just I really like the fact that he like you don't he doesn't really condemn things for being good or bad, but rather he thinks much more about like how good was this like not so much in a vacuum, but just in this particular situation. Was this a crazy move to have chosen?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I like the fact that though he's stubborn about like playing the game his way, he's also really open-minded about like not rejecting any particular strategy or character.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's important for sure. As anybody who wants to advance as a competitor,
Yeah.
for a number of reasons.
I struggle with that a little bit, that thing you just said. Because in my head, there are definitely options that are better and worse, and good and bad are just like, they're relative terms, right? So I think that when I watch something or when I do something, I definitely think, oh, that was a bad thing I did. It got me hit, and it cost me the game.
Well, I think you just said it yourself. Good and bad are relative terms. There's a lot of subjectivity happening there.
Right.
So I think the important thing is, I was actually thinking about this the other day when I was kind of explaining the idea of like weighted rock paper scissors to people.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think instead of thinking of options like in order from best to worst, kind of think have like a coordinate graph almost, and like where your x coordinate would be like reactable to non-reactable, and then your y coordinate would be like safe to unsafe, or like safe to like risky. So something that is really risky and also really reactable is something that you're probably not going to be seeing a whole lot of.
Right.
Yeah, and I think playing other fighting games, playing like Street Fighter, for example, these situations are like so blatantly laid out, where like your options are just so almost so obvious, where it's like, oh crap, I have to do something right now, and you have maybe 2 or 3 options. So a lot of matches kind of come down to, basically the idea of mix-ups and having like kind of a roulette of options, and they're not really exactly equal, so it's not really true rock paper scissors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's assuming things happen like you predict, the way you predict them to, right? Because Melee has so many weird interactions, and shield stabs are randomish, and it's like, the decision
things
tree
like
that way, that's crazy.
Yeah, Melee is kind of weird to analyze in the same way, but the similarities are definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Like there's much more of like a gradient of options and a lot of like things that you can push situations towards. Like for example, something that's been coming up kind of recently with like drug fogs is like the idea of like, what if you DI Sheik's down throw towards the edge so that you get edge cancels and then just either slide off, grab the edge, or just like change the situation.
Because now you have more mix-ups recovering than like teching.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's the kind of thing where like if you think of the game as just purely rock paper scissors, where these are literally the only options available, then you exclude other interactions you could be going for. And Melee is just so full of these interactions, even on a simple stage like FD, that you're never quite sure exactly how some situations will turn out. It's really hard to like boil the game down to a science as much as we try. So just like the tenuous balance between like flowcharty Melee versus like free-form jazz-like Melee is one of the biggest appeals of the game for me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so taking it a little more local, we've had some really interesting tournament results over the last 2 weeks. A lot of unexpected up-and-comers, particularly from New Hampshire. Theo, would you like to do a little bit of a rundown? You did particularly well yesterday, although you may be still salty about that. I don't know.
Wait, are we going if we're going in chronological order, I thought we were talking about some random Sunday tournament that I have no idea what happened, but I thought we were talking about that.
No, we're talking about New Game Plus, I thought.
Yeah, let's go in reverse order.
New Game Plus is way better. Except that I didn't win. But I got second, that's almost a win. That's okay.
That's not like almost a
borderline decent.
Yeah.
So let's see. Mafia got first. He beat everybody. I got second, losing to Mafia.
That was
Perhaps
game
lost
5,
to
right?
Mafia
That was really close.
What?
You're set with Mafia.
Oh yeah, it was really. I think I would have won that set if I didn't kill myself about 6 times, which is good because that means I don't have to actually get better to win. Just don't be stupid in very weird situations. And then if I actually get better too, it should be free. So I'm confident.
There were a couple of times where I think you killed yourself a few times. I don't think I watched like the first 2 games of the set, but there were times where you didn't so much kill yourself as he assisted in your suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like
you didn't
fall off stage. It was like a very, very bad mistake.
It was assisted suicide, which I think is legal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not actually sure about that. I think that's probably beyond the scope of this podcast. But you
legalize it.
You know, don't get me wrong. There were times where you just blatantly fell off the stage and died, and it was like LOL. But there were also a couple of times where I remember he'd tag you with like a fair or something at like 60%, and you would just die straight up off the stage, just dead. It's like that's not really how that character works.
Yeah,
like, you gotta be more careful, Theo. But that's okay.
Right. No, it was a really good set, even with all that shenanigans. Like, there are lots of adaptions made, and he does, like, really fun combos to watch, so even though I die, at least it looks cool. And
is that really how you feel?
Video someday.
That's, so I don't know if everyone knows, but I used to, like, super hate Mafia, but now we're like, kind of friends, so it's okay.
That's an upgrade.
I remember you telling me about that and thinking it was kind of weird. But.
Yeah, I'll just pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you don't hate anyone. Well, first of all, that you don't hate Mafia.
Is very strong.
I think Theo hates.
Yeah. I mean, if you hate people for the fact that they're pushing you to your limits and that they're challenging you in unexpected ways, like, you know, like in the spur of the moment, it's definitely possible to be salty. But beyond that, you know, I feel like the take-home message should be like, clearly what I've done isn't working. Like, what more should I do? What more can I do? And is this someone who I just straight up can never beat in my lifetime? Is this character just impossible for me to beat?
Oh, that hits too close to home.
Yeah, and I think for you, Theo, and for both of your characters, that's not true. And for Mafia as a player, like he's beatable. He's just exceptionally skilled.
Yeah. I'm actually posted stats, and my record wasn't like as hilariously awful as it was, at least in the past like year. It was like I only lost like a third of the time, so that was, I mean, like won a third of the time. So that's a lot better than I thought. But yeah, no, it's just
that's gotta be kind of validating,
sad.
I guess.
Yeah, I'd feel really sad because he would just kill me, and I had all these conspiracy theories on how every single move was meant as like a statement to mess with me. But I'm pretty sure none of that was true, and I was just creating excuses to deal with saltiness. So now I can like appreciate our sets, and like I actually think it's I mean, like I'll be sad I'll lose, but I can like appreciate that he played well.
Yeah, there was a good set to watch. I made sure I couldn't stay for the entire thing, but I caught it on the Twitch on the way home, and it was nail biter.
I actually learned a lot watching New Game Plus like yesterday, because I think I came on around when Lemon was fighting Lint, and pretty much from that point onwards, I was like, oh my goodness, like there's so much you can learn just from watching other people playing different characters, because you notice so much more about like the macro state of the game, and also about like individual like punish situations. Like it's really interesting, because when you're watching someone who has a different playstyle than you get to sort of like spell check what you think they should do versus like, you know, what they actually end up doing, right? And sometimes you get those like wince moments where you're like, oh my god, I can't believe they dropped that, or this was like a free edge guard, or at other times you're like, oh my god, he went for that, I can't believe it, right? That works? Is that real? You know, it's super cool. So there weren't very many sheiks to watch, but it was such an interesting tournament to just like view and think about and consider.
Well, let's continue going down the list because there actually were a couple
yeah.
of sheiks that did well yesterday.
Oh yeah, like Bonfire.
That you might not expect, but yeah, spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
third
no.
was Collapse, right?
Mhm.
Third was Collapse. Fourth was, I think, Infinite Numbers.
Yeah, so New Hampshire
Yeah.
representing.
Thanks, Sai. You're the best.
No. Fourth was Psy.
Yeah.
Psy got fourth, and then I think
Yeah,
Yeah,
Infinite
because he
Numbers
beat
got
Infinite
fifth.
Numbers, which I didn't realize, but I guess that was the first time he's beaten him.
Yeah, they're 4-1
Mhm.
now. So
I was
is
really surprised
threat.
about that. Like when I saw
Numbers
how
is
losers.
godlike. That's so annoying because he's good.
So I have an
Yeah.
apology to make for to Numbers. He doesn't know that I need to make this apology, but I do, because I play Peach, right? And I'm like, yeah, Numbers, I don't think he's very good. And I'd like told a couple people this, and apparently I was very wrong because he went and beat everyone, and I just play Peach, which is a broken character. So yeah, Numbers is godlike.
Well, yeah, about that. So I was really impressed watching a bunch of his games against Lemon. I think at in some of the locals, and just in general, like he's leveled up so much over the last like month or two, I would say. And he has like hunger, and he's around a lot of players in the area who really do want to get better. So huge shout outs to him. I thought he had a really good bracket actually for doing as well as he could. I think he was seeded 6th, but I think one of the hard people he was going to run into early on was Bonfire, and I think he ended up winning 2-1. And eventually he like if you progress through his losers bracket, like another gatekeeper for him was going to be Psy. And I was like, oh my god, Psy's probably going to lose this because he's expressed me the fact that he thinks Icy's Jigglypuff is actually pretty hard for Jigglypuff, and that especially in New England, Puff kind of loses to Ice Climbers. You can't be like as complacent as you want to be, just floating around in the air. And there were some like anti-air
I think
setups.
Puff beats Icy's, but it's like it's not a convincing win. It's like
It's not a free win, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just like play. I think you have to play near perfect footsies against Ice Climbers and to just like not overcommit and chase them.
I was
I
thinking
think it's pretty much like any other matchup with like good character versus Ice Climbers. There's just like there's matchup specific knowledge that you have to have.
Yeah,
And if
right.
you don't have the correct method for dealing with the character,
Mhm.
then you're going to have problems. But I think the Ice Climbers players who are really successful are the ones who cover the weaknesses of their character really well
Mhm.
and don't let people bully them.
So
Cover or disguise them, the
Hungry
weaknesses.
Box talking about this. And,
Well, probably disguise, because we have seen some of the best ICs in the world on the receiving end of some pretty one-sided sets. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like they're still there. The character can definitely still be like cracked open, but
So Hungry Box was talking about this a while back, and he thinks that Icy used to lose to Puff, and then wobbling got legalized, and now it's Puff disfavored or Icy favored. And while I don't know if that's true, I think that this is as good a time as any to talk about wobbling, because that's something that everyone is always thinking about, right? Like, the first time you think about a set with an Ices, in fact, like, as soon as you see that you're gonna be up against an Ices in bracket, right? 20 minutes
Yeah.
before, you're like, oh, damn it, I have to think about wobbling.
You need
How
a
am I not
200
gonna get grabbed?
BPM emote.
200
wait,
BPM.
so okay, so I'm not the only one who does that. Okay, that's
Okay.
good.
No, that's 100% it, right?
It's everybody.
Like,
Yeah.
even Peach players are thinking, okay, all I've got to do is not get grabbed, or right? So, and it's a really controversial topic, right? I think the dust has settled, and it's here to stay. I don't think there's any real opponents for it at a national level. I think that Juggle Guy was the last one to be caved, but people still like it warps the matchup so much, and it warps what you think about. So I was curious what you guys thought about wobbling and how it affects you personally. Like when you're thinking, does it get your blood boiling? I think we can start with Tian, because I think that you've had a lot to say about this in the past.
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
I would like to hear what Tian has to say too.
Say what you
Well-
really feel.
what do I really feel? So, I think starting from, I first started thinking very seriously about wobbling around Evo of last year, where I ended up losing, and I was slated to fight against Hobby in bracket, but I ended up losing to an Ice Climbers player called Leland, and he had really good like wobble setups. And at that point, it caught me off guard, and there were some setups that I could have gotten out of, but I was just so panicky that they just led to wobbles. So after that point, I started like noting a lot more about how wobbles work and how, like how to escape them and how to like steer the game away from them. On a fundamental level, at that point, I felt like, I felt pretty conflicted because I didn't think that wobbling was healthy for the game because it felt too close to an infinite for me. And on the same grounds that some stages were banned, such as like not Yoshi's Island, the one with like the curve, the slanted slopes where you just get like wave shined off. Wobbling to me seemed not too different than that because like there just wasn't a lot of like counterplay once it started, and for a lot of like other interactions in the game, like for Captain Falcon's combos and stuff, right? There's always like little things you can do, little adjustments you can make, and people are even starting to learn how to get out of Marth combos on FD, right? So on that level, I didn't really think that wobbling was like good, but I also recognized that there was like, there's nothing I could really do about it except for complain, right? And complaining doesn't really get you anywhere. You can't change the rules of the game.
It is fun though.
Yeah, it's
Makes you feel
it's
better
just like a
for
mode
having
of
lost to a player that's worse than you, right?
yeah, it's
Exactly.
just like a medium for venting. But at that point, I didn't really like wobbling. But since then, like I've definitely just taken on that mindset. I can't change it, so what can I do to avoid it? And for what it's worth, I think that sometimes like the fear of getting wobbled gets exaggerated so badly that it just warps the way matchups should play out. Like I've talked about this a little bit on the show before about how like crouch canceling is a little bit like undervalued against ice climbers because people are just so afraid of like getting stuck on the ground and wobbling. And even when I was watching like Collapse's set yesterday when he was playing against Infinite Numbers, which came down to like game 3 last stock.
Yeah, it was a super close game.
You could just see that like his style was changing just because he was afraid of ice climbers on the ground. So it's a really valuable resource for ice climbers, and it's literally their best punish. It's just a little like, I guess like I don't know if boring is the word, but like just there's like a lack of diversity in the punish situations when everyone just goes for the most optimal punish, which is always wobbling.
Well, what do you think, Zoso? Because you've been around for like all of the bannings and not bannings and discovery even.
Well, it was never explicitly banned, except at like a handful of TOs.
Okay.
Kind of stuck around banning it for a while. I think even from the very beginning, I mean, to be honest with you, it was pretty much exactly the same as it is now. There were a lot of people complaining about it, and then some people saying that it should be banned, but usually not really that many. And then most people were just like, yeah, it's fine, I guess, but I still think it's stupid.
I think that's where most people stand.
Which is almost virtually everybody, from what I can tell, which is, it's obviously not a problem from a balance perspective. It just obviously isn't. It should be clear to anybody. It doesn't break the character.
I would like to point out one more thing about wobbling. It's the fact that I feel like because there's such a stigma about wobbling, ice climbers players tend to be like a little defensive about how legitimate their kills are or their wins, which is really stupid because at the end they got the setup that you knew the consequences for, and they landed it against you and they killed you, right? Like what's there to complain about? So no, I mean like that's just what happens when you get grabbed by ice climbers. They just wobble you and you die, right? So I one thing I would like to see in the future is that ice climbers players should be more like proud of their wins and not be like defensive about like the means by which they got their wins. Like
here's the thing, that's not coming from Ices players. That's coming from other players telling them that their wins don't count.
Right.
And it's not just like nobody's doing that. It's like I remember last year when the MIOM ranking came out, I think Wobbles was like 8th or 9th. And I was like, I mean, I think he should pretty obviously be 6th. No, it was maybe 2 years ago because this was before Leffen was a big deal. I mean, he was really, really good. Don't get me wrong. He was disgustingly good even back then, but he wasn't the player he is now.
Right.
And I was telling a top player who I will not implicate directly that I think Wobble should be 6th because of his performance at Evo and because he was basically I think he was the only person at that time to have taken a set in recent memory off 4 of the 5, gods or whatever you want to call them. Because he never beat Armada, but he beat everybody else.
Right.
In some shape or form. And he beat Mewtwo King quite a few times, actually. And the person who I was talking to about this said, I mean, Wobbles is really good, but I think it's wrong to ignore the fact that he was wobbling, or something to that effect. Like, it's stupid to ignore the wobbling factor. It's like, what does that mean?
I don't even think Wobbles needed wobbling. Of all the top ICs, I think that he would absolutely have nearly identical results without it. Not that that matters.
It really depends.
Yeah.
And especially, sorry, talking is hard. Specifically, if we're talking about Jigglypuff, the fact that like wobbling in that matchup matters so much. Yes. It matters so much. You really can't overstate it because they have almost nothing on Jigglypuff off a grab aside from that.
Yeah, even if you do if you attempt like a down throw up smash setup, I think Jigglypuff gets out of it if she DIs to the side. And
the thing is, if you get a synced grab at kill percent, you can kill her. But we're talking, like, say if you grab them at 20 or 30 with a synced grab. So if you can't wobble, there's no way that you can turn that into a kill with any kind of consistency. And like against a player like Hungrybox level, Jigglypuff, you're lucky if you get one synced grab in like an entire set. You're lucky. Like the wobbles that Wobbles got that's never going to stop being weird to me. The wobbles that Wobbles wobbled him with at Evo, it wasn't like a blatant like, oh hey, I got you wobble. It was like he had to do 3 or 4 other things after the first grab before the wobble actually started. Like the wobble he got where he like threw him onto a platform. He was trying to do the handoff. He realized he missed it. He jumped onto the platform and jabbed because Hungrybox landed and didn't tech. And then he grabbed. Nana jumped up there, and then he wobbled him. Like, it was ridiculous, the situational awareness required. So that's why I think, at that level of play, I don't really see how anybody can have a problem with wobbling. But I think where people usually find objection with it is like at the lower to like medium level where, not that you can ever really guarantee the grabs, and I think the matchup matters a lot if we're talking about these kinds of cases because certain characters are just able to avoid grabs and less susceptible to bad execution than others. But, if you wait around long enough, they're probably going to mess up and let you grab them, and then you can wobble.
I think that point is the point that Juggle Guy made in his defense of, defense of banning wobbling that resonated with me the most. It's that most of us, the vast majority of players, I'd say well over 99% of players by definition, aren't going to see the upper echelon of play where they never drop a Fox L cancel, where they never get that. And like, I'd say even the level of play at around top 8 at New Game Plus is still considered to be like what, mid, upper, like around that level, where the game just becomes so dominated by one thing. And it's an unfortunate side effect of letting wobbling be legalized is that it completely warps the game around, are you going to mess up and get grabbed or aren't you? And that was the thing that spoke out to me the most. I know Juggle Guy got a lot of hate for, specifically from ICES players and other people, defenders of wobbling, for being off base. But in that particular instance, I thought he was completely on point, and that players around a certain caliber just don't get to play the game of Melee because they get grabbed or they just can't stop getting grabbed.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's pretty clear. It's clear to me. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate side effect.
This guy, Infinite Numbers, I haven't played him. I haven't seen him play. I don't know how good he is, but looking at like New Game Plus results, and I see like, oh, this Ice Climber's a guy from New Hampshire. He wobbles. He got like 5th. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure he's a good player, but like at that level especially, wobbling just lets you skip over so much of the game. If you can get the wobbles, you don't really have to worry about ending your stocks in a timely fashion. You know, like the stuff you have to think about with other characters where it's like, if I don't get the kill here, I'm not really going to be able to easily kill them later. You know, like that's like Peach's bread and butter, basically.
Yeah.
Like, you know, once you get to a point against Marth where he can't really put hits together easily against you, it's like, okay, great, I just need to milk this for as much as I can. That doesn't really matter. Edge guarding doesn't really matter. You know, like, obviously it's not reasonable to really wobble somebody for every stock of the entire set, but like, there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't really matter, that you don't really have to think about. And I don't really think that that's a problem, but I mean, I can see why people don't like it. I can see why they don't like getting wobbled.
Yeah, and he's beating numbers, that is beating players that would be considered above that threshold for sure. Like he 6-1 crush on Sunday, and that is definitely not someone you expect to just drop an L cancel, get shield grabbed, and die, right? Like that's.
Well, I talked to Crush about that, and he said that he wasn't playing with his own controller, and that he was like.
Oh, so maybe that is what happened.
His style, like for beating ice climbers, is generally to like overwhelm them. And I guess if you're on a controller you're not comfortable with, there's just going to be things that you drop.
Well,
so.
Fox can definitely do that to them. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 6-2. Correction. But yeah.
But regardless, it's still a good win, and his other wins of late, you know, more than like they're extremely impressive. Like he's beaten a lot of players that, you know, like Oral, who you would think, yeah, execution in this matchup, like all you have to do is
that to me
X,
is
Y, and Z,
insane,
right?
by the way.
Yeah.
That he beat Arl.
Yeah, that was like a I wouldn't say like a huge upset, but it's an eye opener for sure.
I think it's a huge upset. That matchup is like
It's very different.
do whatever you want, man. Yeah.
Like my week old Peach was like almost good enough to beat like all the ices in New England, but then I realized Fox was just easier. So.
Well, Zoso, what do you think it is about Peach that makes that matchup slanted so hard, or for anyone here really?
She totally destroys Nana, like horribly. She does
separate.
Yeah, right. Like literally anything you hit them with, and ice climbers are kind of weird because they're a floaty character, but they're like Fox and Falco in terms of how hard they pay for mistakes, especially in that matchup. And by mistake, I mean it could literally be like, oh, I misspaced by 1 pixel, and I ate this down smash. Okay, bye Nana, you're dead. And then like, you know, Peach versus Sopo is like, you know, most good characters versus Sopo. It's just, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
but,
it's gross.
I think one of the reasons why that matchup is as good as it is because a lot of players psychologically fear staying on the ground against wobblers, and tend to like play the matchup either on platforms or by jumping a lot. Like characters that are considered good against ice climbers, like Ganondorf, Marth, they sort of like can zone them both in the air and on the ground. But for Peach, you don't really need to zone them on the ground because you can shoehorn that matchup in a way such that most of the interactions are just Peach in the air, ice climbers on the ground, and with frame advantage. So
yeah, that's the other thing. Floating matters a lot too.
You also don't drop L cancels, so that's a big part of it.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's an example where like the direction you want to manipulate the matchup is also like a natural extension of what Peach players tend to want to do, and it's nothing that you really have to go out of your way to do. It just feels great to like aggress against ice climbers and just like beat up Nana. So
yeah,
right.
I think that would probably when I think about it that way, I feel like that's why I see Peach as a good character to pick up specifically to beat ice climbers.
Yep.
You know, because there's not a ton of really super sophisticated knowledge that you need to have to be able to beat them. You know,
we've
like
joked around that like Lemon's Peach only moves forward, and that's a good style against ice climbers.
It's pretty ridiculous.
It doesn't retreat with it.
I mean, I don't think that's going to get you wins against like Nintendo,
right?
Or like, you know, DizKid, or I actually haven't seen Fly play in a while, so I don't know how he is against Peach. But I think we're definitely seeing now the matchup is like pretty playable if both players know all the rules and know what to do. And I think it's probably still Peach favored. But, you know, the fact that you have floating, the fact that you have down smash, like if you want to just pick up a character, like if you got like a big, you know, industrial looking like crate in the mail that in big block letters on the side said Ice Climbers Counter, and it was like full of sawdust, Peach is probably the character that would come out of that box.
So as much as I want to expound upon why Peach is the best character and Icy suck, and that's a 10-0 matchup, we're running out of time.
Yeah,
so before we go, I want to talk about a little bit about Genesis, and I want to hear the top 3 predictions from each of us, and the top New England placing player and the place they get.
So Leffen's like dead because the U.S. government doesn't like him, so he's not part of it.
I mean, no Leffen. Oh no.
Why would he not want Leffen? He can only like add to the excitement of the tournament, even if you personally hate him.
I will say, even though Leffen's social media presence is a little abrasive at times, I think top 8s at big tournaments are a lot less interesting without him.
That's definitely true.
Like very, very, very much so.
Yeah,
Okay.
Leffen will definitely be missed, but he's definitely not going to be in the top 3 because rip passports.
I think Armada first, Hungrybox second, and then third. I don't know. There's a couple of players who I could definitely see getting third. Like Mewtwo King is a possibility. Mango is a possibility, but I don't know. I mean, I know he's had some personal stuff going on, so I'm not really sure what the tournament is going to be like for him. PP is obviously a possibility, and I could see Plup doing it, honestly. I'm really, really, really interested to see more from Plup in the next year.
Same.
I think Plup can definitely break in. I'm going to throw out my predictions now, and it's Armada first because Armada forever. But I'm going to believe in PP second, and because PP gets the power of winter. And it is winter time. No one thought he was going to do well at Apex last year, deservedly, and then he won it. So I think we're going to see...
He also won Skytar that year, though.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. But like PP just randomly shows up in winter. Pound 5 was in winter. He only plays during the winter once when he has the huge insulating beard. So I hope to see the return of PP's beard. And
Yeah, let's go with that.
Grand finals. And
It's pretty superstitious.
I mean, melee doesn't make sense. Gotta go with whatever, you know?
Gotta go with your gut. Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't want to live in a world where H-Box Armada is the highest level of melee that we've ever seen, but that's the case. So let me have my little things to hold on to. And then Mango third, and then Slox at 17th for top placing New England player.
Oh, yeah. I
Is
didn't
anyone
know.
else going from New England that's like relevant?
Is Swift going?
Swift is going. Swift is
Okay.
going. Mad is going, and Mafia is going. And
Okay.
Sora is going.
Okay.
I
Is
think...
Thorn going?
No, Thorn isn't going. At least I don't think so. At Nationals, Swift generally
Thumbs up.
does pretty well.
Yeah.
He has
He beat Westball.
like noticeably significantly better results at Nationals, I would say. Although probably in the last year or two, I think we've been kind of seeing more like he kind of places where expected. Like he beat Shroomed at one Apex, and then he beat Westballs at EVO.
2014.
Yeah,
2015.
yeah, and then we haven't. No, he didn't. It wasn't at 2015. It was 2014.
Evo?
No,
last-
Apex. At Apex, he beat
Right.
Shroom.
Trimmed. Right.
Yeah, and he beat Westballs at EVO like a year and a half ago.
Right.
I mean, I think I would say I would definitely expect Anthony to place higher between the two of them. But it, really like at big tournaments like that, who you have in your bracket matters so much.
Okay.
If it's,
I would say
if
top
it's some-
3.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you have a prediction for top 3 out of curiosity, or?
Me? Yeah, I already said
Yeah, he said it
Armada,
first.
Armada, Hungrybox, and then I don't know. Third could be a lot of people.
Right, a lot of. Okay, so I thought, kind of unpopular opinion here. I feel like Mango has a really good chance of like breaking out because, he hasn't had like home court advantage for like a West Coast major for a long time. So I would not be surprised.
HTC.
That's a huge deal. That really is.
Yeah,
He won't be.
Mango's a really emotional player. He reminds me a lot of like. He's sort of like. He's insanely aggressive, but when he feels it from a crowd, like it can pull him up when he's like second guessing himself, which is
I mean, he has played at a couple of nationals on the West Coast this year, hasn't he?
HTC is the only one, right? And he was not.
HTC wasn't
Yeah,
press
that's
start
true.
in California. Which
maybe?
was Paragon?
There's one
was
where he
in
lost
Florida.
to-
Paragon was in Florida, I think.
Yeah. And there was
They're
one he
two
went
Paragon.
Fox against Armada. I think that was. Do you Fox with it? Was that it?
Yeah,
That was a big one.
Yeah, something like that.
And that was
Well,
the best
in any
set I
case-
think he's played in a while. But yeah.
In any case, I feel like Mango could do really well, and I have more confidence in him than unfortunately, than in a lot of the other people who could beat Armada. So I think Armada or Mango will take it all. I'll say Mango first, Armada second, Mewtwo King third.
The reason why I don't think Mango is going to beat Armada is because I think he's going to go all Falco, which might be good in the long run, but I don't think Mango's Falco.
I think
Their
has
set at Smash or whatever the house tournament was super close.
It
I
was.
still
Yeah.
think that Mango can beat HBox because like he pretty much Ghost Fox for any tournament that HBox appears at, and that's just always going to be something that he levels up like if HBox is there. So I think it's possible he can beat HBox, and whether or not his Fox can beat Armada, it's like sort of like it's a question of faith. But Mango's really good. I love watching him play. I've only liked watching him
Mango's
play
really
for-
good. I'm gonna give the award to Tan for the least controversial statement of the night.
Well, sometimes he's really bad too, like at Evo.
Yeah.
He's never really bad. He's not the best player in the world. You know, or not,
as for
but
best-
not like a god tier player sometimes.
Best placing New England player, I don't know the placement, but I think it's gonna be Mafia actually.
Oh.
I think Mafia has what it takes to surprise people out of region really badly. Not always all the time, because I think his style is like it's a little different than what West Coast Peaches play like.
That's
I
just
don't think it's
Matthew,
quite like I don't think it's quite like
I mean,
Connor's. I don't think it's quite like
I
Matthew's.
really want to agree with you on that one, Tan. But I think, like, if you look at the nationals he's been to,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it. Like, if he gets Nintendo kind of deep in his bracket, he's beaten him a few times. He could go kind of far. But I don't know. You know, I haven't really seen anything that really surprised me from him out of region, and I hate to say that because you know, obviously he's a friend of mine. But
I think he's
I
been
don't
putting
know.
in work,
We'll see.
and I'd be glad to see him.
Oh
do
yeah,
well.
sure.
That's all.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's about it for our show.
My predictions.
Oh damn,
You
we forgot
skipped
about
me.
you. I'm so sorry.
So I'm going to do the super aggressive, try and win the fantasy bracket with mildly insane predictions. So Hungry Box gets first, then Plup gets second, finally beating Armada, and then Armada will get third, and then Mango will get fourth, and PP and M2K will get fifth.
So even though you're a Fox player, you still have the Puff loyalty in you.
No, I think just HBox is like amazing.
He is.
He really is.
He's really amazing, and he's also ridiculously talented. And for some reason, nobody really talks about that in terms of like hyper talented players. But he's like almost like prodigy level talent.
Mm-hmm.
He's ridiculously good. It amazes me that he can still win with Puff so consistently at that level.
So, would you like to make any shout-outs before we close down the show?
Me?
Yes, I would like
Oh.
to start it by shouting out Theo's mom.
Yeah, shout out to Theo's mom.
Hi, Theo's mom, Mrs. Landegger.
Man, we didn't get to like half the things, more than half the things that were on the like itinerary.
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, we talked about wobbling.
Yeah, that was fun. Almost.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Zoso, if you ever want to talk about any of these other things, you're more than welcome to come by the show again, and we would be glad to host you again. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
sure.
for giving up your like part of the evening to hang out with us. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice talking to you guys. Melee is pretty fun.
All right.
And
Yeah,
it's
it really
it's
is.
interesting to talk about. Maybe next time I'll talk about why I think the scene sucks now.
Wow. And on that note, thank you for tuning in, stream. We love you
See you
all.
later.
Yeah.